We've assembled a panel up here. I'm going to introduce each of the people one by one, and they'll each get about 5 minutes to talk to you about Common Core and where they stand on that particular issue. And we want to start with Donna Anderson. She began her career as a classroom teacher at Fort Supply in the Oklahoma Panhandle. She has served as Director of Alternative Education, Assistant Principal, and Principal. She also started a school at the Sac and Fox Nation in Stroud. For the past 3 years, she has served as the Superintendent of the Bennington Public Schools. Please give her a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I am a school superintendent. That's what I do for a living. I know that's kind of a novel idea. And I am running for Janet Barisi's second term of State Superintendent of Public Instruction. So I was a little overcome to find that there would be no election. She would just be there. But anyway, I do want to tell you that I, like a lot of educators, when the Common Core came out, I was very impressed. I was very impressed with standards. I was very impressed with rigor. But as we went along and as I learned more, I knew that this is not something that's for our children, and I'm going to tell you the reasons why. A little bit of the history that you were not told is that when we adopted the Common Core in 2010, we didn't have choices. You can either adopt Common Core or you can lose your federal aid. You can lose your federal dollars to your schools. That's not a choice. That is a mandate. So our legislators, they sight unseen, they adopted the Common Core standards. The standards had not been released. There was no research base behind it. It was just, oh, okay, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do it. Well, so you get to looking at the Common Core. I can't support it because, number one, it is absolutely not right for early childhood. It does not take into consideration any kind of early childhood development. I was worked for OPAT, Oklahoma Parents as Teachers, birth to 3. And if you do any kind of brain research, you understand that children in early childhood cannot do what's being asked of them in the curriculum. That's another thing I'll tell you. That's not a choice. It is not a local school choice about what curriculum how we will teach those standards. We are told we will teach the standards. The textbooks are made to fit the standards. It is line for line what the teacher says, how the teacher says it, what the student should do. There is no choice. I'm going to read just a little bit of a second grade question to you in math, and you're going to understand. Angelica has 5 lunch boxes. The lunch boxes are yellow, red, purple, orange, and blue. She brings a different color lunch box to school each day. She brings the purple lunch box on the 4th day of school of the week. She brings the blue lunch box on the 2nd day of the week. She brings the yellow lunch box on the day after the purple lunch box. She brings the red lunch box on the day after the weekend. Show on what day of the week Angelica brings the orange lunch box. That is what your 2nd grade child is going to be expected to do. Now, you can do this. How did you solve this problem? Did you act it out? Did you draw a picture? Did you make an organized list? Did you use logical reasoning, or did you look for a pattern? Explain how you got your answer. Well, the first thing that our 2nd graders are going to do at Bennington is look at us and say, how come Angelica has so many dang lunch boxes? And we're going to say, we don't know. We don't know. The point of this is, after about the 2nd sentence, we are out of the developmental range of that child. Second reason I cannot support Common Core. There are absolutely no accommodations for special needs children. This year, we will not have a modified assessed test for special needs children. If you can't see, if you can't hear, or if you cannot physically touch the computer, you will have an accommodation. If you are a low-level learner, you are out of luck. If you have been taking a modified assessment test and you have been successful all of your time, You are now thrown in to the regular assessment, and you are told to sink or swim. The states that are coming out now with their scores, totally crashing. If you tell children time and time again they're failures, they begin to believe it. Why in the world in Oklahoma do we want to tell our children that they're failures? We don't. I do not want to see the test scores plummet, and we've been told they will in 2 years. Third reason I cannot support Common Core, it does not align with an exit test, an entrance test from high school to college. We spin our wheels teaching 7 end of instruction tests that mean not one dang thing to a student or to a college. But if they don't pass one of those tests, they don't get a diploma. I am supporting the ACT as the exit test because Dr. Barisi didn't tell you how many children, 97% passed it, but what's that number of the 3% that didn't? It was over 500 children that did not get a diploma in the state of Oklahoma because they could not pass the test. Each one of those children cost themselves and our state $260,000 over their lifetime in lost earnings, lost wages, and it creates a cycle that children cannot get out of. My mom and dad didn't graduate, why should I? It is not okay. We do not find acceptable rates of failure, and that's what she just said. Acceptable rates of failure, 3%. It's not okay. I want to tell you, I'm going to end because I don't know where I am with my time.
You got about a minute.
My husband, every year, is a social studies middle school teacher, goes to Oklahoma City and reviews test questions that she was talking about. He came back this year and said to me, he doesn't tell me what the questions are, he knows I won't remember, and I don't want to know that. He said, the test questions in social studies for middle school children, they will not be able to pass. They are written in the Common Core language. They will not be able to pass them even if I teach them history, because the readability is so above their level, you will lose them after the second question. So when she tells you that they're not Common Core standards in other subject areas, she is not telling you the truth. We will have Common Core throughout the entire subject area. So I'm not a supporter of the Common Core. I am a supporter of local control, and I appreciate you all having me here today.
Donna, thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. John Cox. He is in his 20th year as the school superintendent for Peggs, Oklahoma, and his 28th year as an educator. He is an adjunct professor of education at Northeastern State University, teaching leadership and administration courses to principals, superintendents, and educational research to master's candidates. He serves as president of the Organization of Rural Elementary Schools and vice chair of the Oklahoma Schools Assurance Group. He has served on several committees for the Oklahoma State School Board. Please welcome Dr. John Cox.
Good morning. Good morning. Everybody says good morning. Okay. All right. As he said, I'm a current superintendent, and we can feel the effect of what Common Core has on us. So I'll tell you right from the very beginning, I am against Common Core. So you can clap for that. And it's important to say that because, you know, this morning you heard a lot of things about, well, it's a local district option to do this, and we're going to have flexibility at the local district. But like Donna said, that is not true. It is not true because we've spent thousands of dollars trying to do professional development, on trying to teach our teachers how to implement the Common Core. And she can say how many times she wants to about how to get to Dallas, but you're still going to wind up at Dallas at the end. So you're still going to be teaching what's in that Common Core group. And what I would like to see, and I'm going to be passionate about pushing, is that we put the responsibility back on our local teachers. The experts that are in that classroom that knows how to teach biology, knows the content, and our local professors at our universities who have an expectation of what a student needs to know when they come to them. These are the people we ought to be drawing information in, not from people from out of state, not from people who are out there trying to make money off of Oklahoma, because we're sending millions of dollars out of state and we should be spending it right here and using our resources right here. So I was sitting back there listening, and I just didn't know where to go first because I was becoming really frustrated. And the last 3 weeks, I've talked to teachers all across the state of Oklahoma, and I only found one that backed what we're doing right now. The rest are frustrated, and it's more than just an irritation. It has become a hatred for what we're doing. And you can imagine going to work every day as a teacher and just really not liking the job you have, because that rubs off on the kids, that rubs off on the parents, and it makes just the whole setting unbearable. And what we have to do, and what you have to do, is we've got to excite Oklahoma, and we've got to say that learning is fun, learning is the best thing that we can do, and we can enjoy it. And it takes all of us. And no matter what happens to me, that is going to be my message. And she really messed up, because when she said she's going to do that second term, I thought, no, you're only going to be in there 14 more months. And we're going to work hard to make sure that happens. Because teachers are frustrated. How many here are teachers that we have? Okay, and how many here are parents or grandparents of kids? Okay, you sat here and you listened that parents are first and foremost. Well, that is absolutely correct. But then when she listed the third grade retention plan, well, that is a state mandated from a national mandate that came through Florida to get to us. And what it does is it takes the power out of the parents' hands, because you can't go in there to a school and talk to the principal and teacher and go, what is wrong? What is the concerns we have with our child? And why should we keep them back in third grade one more year? Why should we humiliate a child? Now, she'll say, well, yeah, you shouldn't pass them on. But there are unique situations for every child across the state. And so, and what's even more ludicrous is that they put in the law that if you hold someone back in third grade, at Christmas time of that second year, you can promote them to fourth grade. And you think about that. They've already missed the whole first part of fourth grade. But then you can magically move them to fourth grade, and that's going to make that child feel better. So I am very passionate of what I do. I am totally about the child. What happens with the child always comes first. If there's decisions that come through our school board and what we do, we look at what's best for the child first. And I think that's what you guys are doing too with this Common Core.
1 minute.
I absolutely believe that you guys are here and you're passionate, and I can feel the passion against Common Core here. Yes, she can spin it, and yes, she might say there's good things in there. But let's get back to Oklahoma. Let's get back to the expertise we have here in this room, and let's build something that we can have here for us. Because who best knows what's the best thing for your child in your school? You are the ones who know, not somebody from the State Department. Somebody asked a question about servant a while ago. Talked about servant. Well, I am a servant of the people in my school district. I serve the people there, and I will serve the people of Oklahoma. I am not your boss. I work for you. Thank you very much.
Dr. Cox, thank you. Next, we have Karen Cure. Jenna Parisi knows her as Master. She was born and raised in Oklahoma. For the last 6 years, she has homeschooled her 3 children and participated in classical conversations. She has worked as a graphic designer since 1991, starting at Hobby Lobby's corporate office and then at a prestigious real estate company in Oklahoma City as their marketing director. Karen is very involved in her church, nonprofits, and promoting the arts. Please welcome Karen.
Thank you. Like you said, I'm a homeschool mom. I've been doing that for about 6 years. I have a completely different philosophy on education than most of the people up here, which I respect what you guys do, but I disagree with the whole system in general. I think children are individuals and should be taught that way. I don't think they progress grade to grade all at the same time, all at the same level. I think children are made differently. That's the way they're designed. Their brains are designed a different way. They're not designed to learn the way the system teaches them. And so that's why I homeschool. I think we have a real problem. As you can see, we have a Republican that just came and spoke. I'm obviously against Common Core. Our party platform is against Common Core. Our national platform is against Common Core. And we have a Republican that's going to continue to run on that ticket even though our platform is against it. So I don't really understand that or know how that's even going to happen, but she's going to do it. Our governor also, same thing. She's for Common Core. I obviously oppose it for the main reason it's unconstitutional. That should be our basis. That should be our measure for everything. The federal government does not have any jurisdiction in the area of education, period. So Common Core is a weed. I kind of look at it as a weed. It's just another weed, and this one's a bad one. But unless you pull the root of what's really wrong, and that is that the federal government is involved in education, we've allowed that to happen. People haven't done anything about it. They haven't held their people accountable. So we haven't used the Constitution as a measure in a long time. And so until we do that, until we come back to our foundation that the federal government isn't supposed to be in education and the Department of Education needs to be shut down completely, until we get to that point, we're going to have weeds. So that's kind of my approach. That's kind of how I feel about Common Core. It's an awful overreach of government. It's complete total control of your children, and of course I don't like that. So homeschoolers just want to be left alone. We don't want your strings, we don't want your candy, we don't want anything from you. So we don't take government money, we don't take government incentives, and they can't control us. So that's why we do what we do. So that's how I feel about Common Core. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Dr. Jack Herron. He currently serves as the Government Relations Director for the Professional Oklahoma Educators. He has been an Assistant State Superintendent for Financial Services and as the Outreach Coordinator, Director of Regional Centers for the Oklahoma School of Science and Mathematics. He's been a college administrator, a teacher, a high school principal, and served as school superintendent in 4 Oklahoma cities over an 18-year period. Please welcome Dr. Jack.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I adhere to a very positive atmosphere, and I'm going to tell you something good is going to happen today. And won't it be fun 14 months from now when we go into office, and I am running for State Superintendent for Public Instruction, but when we go into office and we've collaborated on a platform and we've collaborated on a budget, and I have done one of those budgets and handed it to the legislature, and in my work currently, I work at the Capitol for the organization I work for, and we watch legislation, we introduce legislation. I do have to register as a lobbyist. I am a professional Oklahoma educator. You have a great panel here today. These folks are friends of mine. They're trained educators, they're practitioners, and they know what they're talking about and know what they're doing. I made notes while I was listening for the last hour and a half, and I just want to tell you that we listened for an hour and a half to the most misinformation and hypocrisy I've ever heard in my life. I'm going to give you some quick examples to show that, all of which pertain to Common Core. This is a Tulsa World article, and I read from the Tulsa World article. Educators take slam at schools. Stinging indictment is brought against the state teaching system. A stinging indictment of the state public school system by deans and officials of the University of Oklahoma was brought to light here today by Major Eugene Kerr Muskogee, member of the university's Board of Regents, who said a survey made by the board revealed that 25% of the high school graduates were not equipped for university work. This article, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, was dated Tulsa, Oklahoma, Sunday, June 6, 1937. I've used that for years. Now, we've been listening to this malarkey for years and years. I also want to point out, and I'm going to say this, my mother used to tease me. As a youngster, I lived in Africa. My dad was an agricultural specialist. I'm born in Shawnee. Mother's from Wewoka. Dad's from Mangum, Oklahoma. But Dad was an agricultural specialist, and we lived in Africa where he taught them how to grow wheat and cotton. I've been homeschooled, gone to French school, gone to DOD school, gone to public school, private school, and really and truly, ladies and gentlemen, education is where you find it. That's why I say you might be surprised, ma'am, what we all really believe, because if you study this, you know the differences in developmental, and you know the differences. Personally, I believe in probably a K3 or K5 ungraded because of developmental differences. And that's what I would advocate. My mother was an elementary teacher, elementary principal, my grandmother, so I have it in the family. But there's one key statement that our predecessor made. She criticized the legislation for State Question 744, which was going to put a lot more money into education, of which the vast majority strongly opposed. And she criticized unions. And she turned right around and hired the top person who promoted that legislation from the union, who's now her chief of staff. And when I'm over in the Capitol and word comes over from the State Department about legislation they want, guess who's leading that legislation? This person who's her chief of staff. And so, as Dr. Cox said, we don't need a cookie cutter approach to this, but I'm out in the schools every day. I spoke to 2 different schools yesterday, around 500 teachers yesterday in Oklahoma City, and I will tell you the state is in turmoil, the state is stressed, parents are stressed, students are stressed, teachers are stressed, grandparents are stressed. The big thing happening in Oklahoma this year is my grandson goes to kindergarten. Now, for the teachers, get ready. And my daughter, because of these questions we've talked about on Common Core, you know, there's certain things that a kindergarten student is supposed to know. And my daughter is terribly distressed because she's not sure that our grandson really knows that stuff. Well, I will tell you he knows it. When he's around my daughter, he wants to act like he doesn't, but when he's around Grandpa and Grandma, he knows the answers to those questions. But the thing is, my wife and I had the discussion. For 11 years, I supervised places all over the state of Oklahoma where we taught AP, BC Calculus, and Calculus-based Physics C. So I know what rigor is. And the whole thing is, my wife is a home economics major, and we had a debate this morning before I left, and I said, well, ma'am, you should know calculus. And she said, I don't think you really need to know calculus for everybody. And that's what I think the whole thing is about. We don't need a cookie cutter approach, as Dr. Cox says. And
30 seconds.
At the same time, we need to recognize people's own wishes and developmental differences in people. So if we're successful, like I said, in 14 months, we're going to change the system. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Linda Murphy. In 1994, she served as education advisor in Governor Keating's office and later as Deputy Commissioner of Labor for Workforce Education and Training. She was appointed to the Governor's School to Work Council, the State Job Training Coordination Council, and the Commission on the Status of Women. She has worked in public and private education, specializing in teaching children and adults with special learning needs. She served as the Central U.S. Representative for the Optometric Extension Program Foundation in California and was given an award for her work with visually related learning problems. She's an education consultant and a certified examiner for the structure of the Intellect Learning Abilities Test. Please welcome Linda Murphy.
Thank you. Well, I do very much appreciate being here today and the crowd, all of you that have come on a Saturday. I know that parents are getting ready for school this year, and in Oklahoma, most people don't yet know what Common Core is. If they listen to Janet Barisi, they will never know what Common Core is. We have to get on the computer, do some research for ourselves, and there is tremendous amount of information coming from the left and from the right. Thank God. We have people sitting here today that are homeschool, public school, Democrats, Republicans. I am not proud of the leadership in the Republican Party coming from our governor and our state superintendent. Governor Fallon is now the chairwoman of the National Governors Association, which is really the key nonprofit which has initiated these standards. The people pushing them, the talking points, the marketing statements that are being made sound good. And when we hear it and the discussions that are being held from the people pushing the program, the agenda, they want to put Common Core into a box and say it's standards, it's only standards. You heard Janet Barisi say that over and over. That is a deception. As Donna Anderson pointed out, the ELA, English Language Arts and Math, isn't just that subject. There are other subjects integrated in. There are processes and procedures that have to be followed. She can say that it's just the point we get to and how you get there is okay, however you do it. That is not true, because everyone that is in the system, the students and the teachers are in the system too, being evaluated on how the students perform with high accountability tests. We like the idea of accountability, but again, we've got to look below the surface and see what it really is. What's the philosophy that we're operating in? And what's happening is the test, which our political superintendent has now set aside for a year, she is still on the board of that 22-state consortium that she seemed to be condemning today. She said that herself publicly. After she pulled us out of PARC testing for 1 year, which is a partnership for assessment, for readiness, for careers in a college. And the college on that is junior college. It is community college. There is an organization called the National Center for Education and the Economy, directed by a man named Mark Tucker. Mark Tucker was there in the 90s. It was funded by the Carnegie Foundation when it was established, and in 1994, when I ran for state superintendent of schools, I got 49.5% of the vote statewide. I ran as a Republican. I was appointed by Governor Keating as Secretary of Ed. That was not confirmed by the Democrats on the Senate Education Committee. They had an incumbent, Sandy Garrett, who stayed in that office, and she had been Secretary of Ed, and she was taken out of that position with Governor Keating's appointment. Because Governor Keating asked me to stay on in his office and continue to fight against this federal control, this central control of education, which I ran against. I ran for local control, academic standards against outcomes-based education, Goals 2000, and School to Work. We have it all over again. It's repackaged, named Common Core, which is standards. But with those standards come tests, come evaluations of teachers, students, determinations about their lives. Choices are being made. Mary Fallon said that this is about developing a human capital pipeline. That is in the report that she held up this past weekend in the meeting with the National Governors Association. As I said, I'm very displeased with our Republican Party. I am considering running for state superintendent. I don't know how much public awareness there will be within the Republican Party to turn against what the governor's doing, what the state superintendent is doing, but it is about developing the workforce. Hillsdale College, Dr. Arnn has publicly spoken and said this is workforce development. Heritage Foundation, Cato Institute, Pioneer Institute, and I'm talking about liberal, independent, conservative groups coming together. The Administrators Association in 2011 called Common Core snake oil. It's another experiment costing millions of dollars.
Of you are talking about running for state position. I would like to know how you can talk our legislature into not accepting any federal dollars.
Who wants to tackle that?
Yeah. Because I've been in a department, I always had to look at the laws. The law says that the superintendent for finance will work with the state board to determine how money is to be spent. And lo and behold, I wanted to make this statement to all of you because I'm not sure the state board knows this. It's already in law, it's already in regulation that the State Board of Education will determine whether we take any federal money and determine how we spend it. It's already there. I wish someone would say to them, if you don't want it, don't take it. The other thing is on these P20 meetings you heard about, the highest paid person in the state is on the State Department of Education staff and payroll, and he regularly attends the P20 meetings and runs the P20 meetings. They are prepared to collect data, folks. Just get ready.
And I will say also that there was a great opportunity to do just what you said when the waiver came out for No Child Left Behind. And we could have not taken federal money at that point and not had to go along with the Common Core state standards. But we didn't have any choice once they took, if you take the federal money, you take the standards.
Next question, please.
Okay, this question is, I'm Jenny White with ROPE, and I just wanted to address this question to Mrs. Anderson, but I would also like to thank everybody for being here, and if anybody has a follow-up for the answer, that'd be great. I was very disappointed to hear Dr. Breesy talk about the history standards, and in our research, we have found not what she has said to be true. And we actually did find that while Governor Henry was still in office, he created an executive order forcing Oklahoma to adopt then the Common Core state standards in not only English and math as we have, but also in social studies and in science as well. So when Dr. Breesy says that these are state standards, then and she likes to follow the law, then apparently she's breaking the law because we have this law saying that. And I'm very curious to know what your thoughts on that topic are, and also, were you aware that our very conservative state standards call America a constitutional democracy?
You know, the one thing shocked me when my husband came back, and he said, and he's the social studies teacher, and he said, I can teach my children social studies like I'm supposed to teach exactly what they're supposed to know. And the test is no longer about social studies. So the test is about, can you read a passage that is completely obscure and go back and make answers that don't have anything to do with the passage. So when she said that our standards are not going to be Common Core, she's not going to reinvent the wheel. She did get off of PART for 1 year, but I promise you, after an election year, we'll go right back to the same assessment that she's on the board with. So we're not going to have any different assessment. We don't have anything different than Common Core. You can call it Oklahoma academic standards all you want. It is the Common Core standards. We will be assessed by PARC. It will be after the election. So I don't know if I completely answered your question, but you're completely correct when you say, and I was looking at the science standards yesterday, that they basically tell children that humans are bad for the earth, that global warming is a fact, and that the only way that we can get rid of global warming is through government interaction and policies. So, I mean, those are the type of things that definitely you can't lie about. You cannot lie about what is in black and white, and that's what happened this morning.
I think Donna said the perfect thing is that the Oklahoma academic standards are just going to be the very same thing as the Common Core. Yes. They're just going to change the name, change some wording on it, and still shove it down our throats. So it's extremely important, if you're passionate about taking away the Common Core and getting back to local control, local instruction, local academics, then you need to be very concerned about what she's doing on changing, because she said teachers were involved and there's all this involvement. Well, I was at one of those meetings where we spoke for 3 minutes, and I was allowed to speak. I realize some of you weren't allowed to speak this last time, but all they did was tape record me. There was no input. That was considered input. You go there and talk, they tape record you, and that's input. So I would be very passionate, and I would be out there fighting and making sure people know that we need to get everything back in the local district and get instruction back there. And so, Donna, I thank you for saying that. It's just going to be a change of the name.
And I just want to ask you one thing. John and I are superintendents. How many times have you been asked your opinion about anything in 3 years?
Yeah, from
Zero.
From the State Department.
We do not get asked our opinion. Not one time. She doesn't want to know.
I used to be very active in giving my opinion and being involved, but for the last 2 years, very rarely do I go to the State Department, because you have a security guard there that stops you, and they make sure you're there for a specific reason. You can't go there to give input, and input's not heard.
I want to add on American history, you were mentioning science, and yes, that's right. Online right now in American history, these new standards that are supposed to be Oklahoma's own, American history starts after the Civil War in high school. No founding fathers, no early American history, no founding of the nation. It is not there. Look online, you will see what I mean. The early American history is found in 5th grade. Then the next era is in 8th grade. High school after the Civil War. Now, there is a political view involved, if you're not aware, and there is a political view involved in the whole Common Core system. It is bringing the bottom up, the top down, get them through this tube of commonality, and at the end, they will be equal. That's the ideal. We've gone to an outcomes process from a process of equal opportunity to learn, where every student has an opportunity to learn to the best of their individual ability. From that to outcomes. These outcomes are being measured, quantified, put into formulas so that they can go through computer calculations through the state longitudinal data system, where data is being collected for teachers and students. That's how we get accountability at the end of this process. Right now, we're still in transition to the transformation we're headed to unless we get off of this track.
And I want to add, good job. I have taught U.S. government in high school in Oklahoma, and I want to add that there are persons within her own staff who would contradict what she said today, and they say they were not involved and they do not approve what's been done. Now, basically, most of what I know on this particular issue, Jenny has kept me well up to date on this. She does all of you. However, this is just a sham. This is just something. Superintendent Barisi has done a complete 360 on all this since she came to office. And so what you're hearing is just a sham. And if you're a practitioner out here, the teachers, I do professional development, they want to know what is Common Core. They want to know what are we supposed to teach. It is a terrible deal.
I want to say on history, I use story of the world, and I teach history in order the way it happened. And we don't move on until they master what happened. And is there anybody out there, does everyone know about the NSA and all of the IRS scandal and the Benghazi scandal? Is everyone well aware of that? Is there anybody here that says that the government is trustworthy? Do we think that we have a moral government right now? Raise your hand if you think we do. Okay. Why would you put your children and allow that government to mold and shape their worldview? Why would you put them in that system to do that? You don't trust them on any other level, but we entrust, my children are over there, we entrust their little minds and their brains and everything they think and feel and their entire worldview, we are trusting to the government to mold and shape, and they have an agenda. Governments have agendas. They want power, they want total control, and that's just their nature. That's what they do. That's why our founding fathers said to chain them down to the Constitution. They've not been chained down, and they're molding our children into these, they're indoctrinating our children. And this is just the perfect system to do that in. So why would we do that? We don't trust them in any other area. Why would we allow this for them to have total control over curriculum, total control over standards, total control over everything, and think that they know better than we do? Why would we do that?
Where in the U.S. Constitution does it mention education? It doesn't.
I have one.
It
if
doesn't.
anyone
I've
wants to
taught
read
this
it.
in class. It doesn't. So what's not in the Constitution? Where is it left to? That's correct.
Next question, please.
I have a very practical question that I've been searching for the answer to. And if we are successful in defeating Common Core, we're going to have to come up with a dollar figure to replace the amount of the federal funding. How much is that?
I can tell you for my school, we receive out of a $3.2 million budget, I'm going to say that I'm in the close to the $500,000 range overall. And that's Title I, all the title programs. I'm a very small school. If we don't receive those federal funds, they're going to have to come from somewhere if we want to continue to have teachers and be able to put kids in buildings. But what I will say is federal funds allow us to, I just got music in our school. I just put art back in my school. And I couldn't do that if I didn't have funds, because since 2008, the state has been cutting my budget. And I don't have the state aid to fall back on. And so I realize that we would like to not take federal funds, but I sure don't want to give up my music and my art and my ag and all the things.
Well, that is the reason I'm asking. I don't want you to.
Yeah.
And part of this process of defeating Common Core would be to mount funding drive to somehow or another come up with the money to replace the federal funds. And I'd like to know what that figure is for
Yes,
the
sir.
whole state of
I
Oklahoma.
don't think we're going to miss any, really. I think the figure furnished by Rope and others for Oklahoma is around $220 million, and that's just a liberal estimate. However, I don't think we're going to miss anything there. And I want to say to all of you, and I've said to this group as we appear, get ready. Next year, there's going to be new monies made available for education. Why do you think that will happen next year? It's an election year. They've not wanted us to have the money. The money is going to be there. But as far as Common Core was passed and hurried through by the legislature so that we could go after race to the top money. How much race to the top money have we received? Zero. And we've reapplied for that. And as Donna said, we've even gone in and gotten waivers to try to help us to qualify for some of it. So personally, I'm not really sure that right now, sir, we will miss any money that we're probably not getting.
Thank you. That was a critical deal to defeating Common Core.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming.
Don't you agree, Donna?
Next question, please.
I warn you, I'm not an educator. I'm not a grandparent. I've never been a parent. However, I'm very concerned about our country. I'm very concerned about the future of our country and who's going to be in charge for the children, people that are young people now and children. So something that keeps popping up in my mind related to this subject is, if we say we defeat Common Core, we have to have a curriculum and standards that bring students to the point where they can actually attend college if they want to and are prepared for that. That's one question, is how do we do that? The rest of the question is, if they are prepared for college and university adequately in Oklahoma, which I'm not sure that's happening now, maybe you can answer that too, but if they are adequately prepared for college and universities, we have a lot of colleges and universities that aren't prepared to teach them beyond what we might teach them because they have agendas. And then beyond that, what is the government going to do to provide jobs for them? I mean, we have a huge problem here, of which this, to me, is foundational. So, I don't care who addresses that, but do you have something to say?
I think my comment would be that we have great success stories coming out of public schools. We have great teachers doing awesome jobs and preparing kids for college. We do. If we are successful and not have Common Core, I think we ought to have our educators in Oklahoma be able to come up with the instruction that we need to use, with the standards that we need to use that fit Oklahoma. And we have plenty of competent people that can help with that. Business people, parents, teachers who are that have expertise in those areas. And what I'd like to see, and kind of what you're saying is are our students prepared when they leave high school and go on to college? Well, the key to that is, why don't we go ask a college professor in Oklahoma and see what standards these kids do not know and what they expect that they do know when they get to them. I mean, that's really simple. That's simple. But before all this Common Core came through, there was some collaboration with teachers to create objectives, and so schools could follow those. And you're right, we have to have some kind of uniform. We have to have some uniform instruction, uniform standards. But then we also need the flexibility to teach those to our local communities and let our local school boards be the driver of that instruction. We need to trust people again to do their jobs.
One thing I'll say also is that if we were able to teach the entrance test standard of what they want, our remediation rates would plummet. Right now, we spend 4 years teaching to 7 tests that don't mean anything to colleges. So of course we're going to have remediation rates that are outrageous. That's why I promote the ACT as our exit. It's not the end all, but also I have a young man, my son is a senior, and he doesn't want to go to college right after school. He goes to career tech. So he wants to gain a skill to be able to get that job that you're talking about, to be able to have the choice to go back later on if he wants to. He's got 2 sisters that went to school, one to OU, one to OSU, and he said, Mom, I don't want that right after school, and I don't want that debt. So he's smart enough as a 17-year-old to say, I want to go to career tech, and then I might want to go to Spartan. So that's what we need to tell kids is okay. It's okay if that's the route that you're going to go. Right now what we're telling them is, you've got to go to college, you've got to go to college, you've got to go to college. And we all know that there's so many children out there that do not need to go to college. And they might need to go later on, but they don't need to go when they graduate from high school. So I say if we teach the ACT, our remediation rates go down, and we accomplish what the colleges need. That's my theory. I'm sticking to it.
There are plenty of models of academic standards that we can adopt in the state of Oklahoma, and it needs to be collaboratively with community, parents, teachers, homeschooling also, Karen. I want to just say that we must get rid of Common Core to have freedom in homeschooling. And I think you do know that, and most homeschoolers here know that. Because the more control we allow in our public schools, top down, the less freedom we will all have. And the kind of society that you would like to see, that we would all like to see, citizens who can think independently, who know their rights, the Constitution, all of these things that have made America great and free enterprise, capitalism, instead of anti-American sentiment and philosophy that's being taught. And if we don't have local control, we can't set our own academic standards, and you do not have local control with Common Core. So that's back to the focus, I believe.
Ma'am, there are roughly 521 school districts in Oklahoma and 22 charters, and the whole homeschool system and other private schools and different things like that. In listening to what everybody says, I agree totally with them, but here's the whole thing. This is the United States of America. I'm a veteran. I serve so everybody can have differences of opinions. And the whole thing is, that means all the kids, every single one of them, and we've got to do something. Now, personally, because I've been working in the math physics area, I have a plan that when we change out the system up there, we're going to begin an early childhood math program that hopefully in about 3 years we can change the scores and carry this all the way through. The math teachers have told me what they need, and I have a plan. So this is the United States for all the kids.
To answer your question, can you hear me? To kind of follow what Linda said, I want to quote Milton Friedman. I'm a Milton Friedman fan. I don't know if anybody else is, but so that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear that there is no alternative way so far discovered in history of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise system. The answer to education, we're clipping weeds again. I mean, this is all weeds. The answer to education is a free market system. If you have a bad product, the free market system corrects itself. It eliminates bad products. If you want a good coffee and the coffee shop you go to has a crummy coffee, you're going to go somewhere else, and that makes that person make better coffee. That's just the way it works, and there hasn't been a better system this far discovered in history to correct itself. And so again, we're clipping weeds, but the root is that the federal government needs to exit out of education. We need to return it to the local people, to the state, and stop going around the circle. The definition of insanity is going around and around expecting a different result, and that's what we do in education.
Thank you for the question. Next, please.
Well, you took my comment from me, but yeah, the free market. What, if we don't like socialized healthcare, why would we like socialized public education? Free market is the best solution. Linda, you mentioned something in your opening statement about the recent letter that Governor Fallon released, talking about human capital in Common Core and all that good stuff.
Yes.
Could you kind of explain what she meant by that. I mean, what is this really about? And
Right.
that
Well, there's
infrastructure?
the document that I referred to. I believe it's called America Works. It's available online through the National Governors Association, and it's the initiative that Governor Fallon chose as chairman of NGA. Now, it's really not her idea. It's been coming along for a long time. Without going back through all of the history, it's an accumulation of buy-in of big corporate America. I call it big government, big business, and progressive educators. That's what we have going on with Common Core. Governor Fallon, with the State Chamber of Commerce, Tulsa Chamber of Commerce, Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce, George Kaiser, funding education agenda for change. These ideals are all being incorporated together for a total reform of education. And the end product for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, who highly supports the NGA in this initiative. In fact, they're at the table. Pearson Publishing Company, McGraw-Hill, Gates Foundation, who will all profit from the materials that are being produced for Common Core, for the delivery system, the technology, the training. There are many, many ways, the testing, that these companies are at the table and they're writing policy with our governors, with our state school superintendents. And then we have people like Michael Cohen, who heads up Achieve, which is a non-governmental organization, nonprofit, working under the sanction of the National Governors Association. They produce Common Core. Common Core is copyrighted. Now, what does that tell us? Do we own it? Did it start in the state? And so Governor Fallon has bought into an ideal of training the workforce and improving education, and probably would, if she talked for long, sound a lot like Janet Barisi on explaining it, that it is only standards. Again, it's a big system. Workforce development.
We don't need a $200,000 survey of this year's Oklahoma testing to tell us that if one child was disrupted, the sample is tainted. And yet Indiana did this, and they said no damage, but it's going to be the same unit that does Oklahoma. We're going to spend $200,000 to do a survey, and all of you and all of us are intelligent enough to know that the sample was tainted because of the testing problems.
I'm going to quote John Taylor Gatto. If anyone is familiar with him, I'm going to quote him right now. But he was New York's Teacher of the Year several years in a row, veteran teacher, about 30 years. And he would do experiments on his kids because he didn't like what the system was telling him to do. The kids weren't learning. And so he would do his own experiments, and he was very hated by the administration for it and ridiculed. But he won Teacher of the Year because his students actually learned. So I'm going to quote him what he says about human. Is it collateral? What did she say?
Human
capital. Human capital. Here's what he says, and you can go to his, he wrote Dumbing Us Down, and he has a website, but it's John Taylor Gatto, G-A-T-T-O. School in America became like school in Germany, a servant of corporate and political management. We should reveal the mechanism of mind control training, habits, and attitudes. The secret of commerce that kids drive purchases meant that schools had to become psychological laboratories where training in consumerism was the central pursuit. Since bored people are the best consumers, school had to be a boring place, and since childish people are the easiest customers to convince, the manufacture of childishness extended into adulthood had to be the first priority of factory schools. Nationally, teachers and administrators weren't let in on this plan. They didn't need to be. If they didn't conform to instructions passed down from increasingly centralized school offices, they didn't last long. In the new system, schools were gradually reformed to meet the pressing need of big businesses, to have standardized customers and employees. Standardized because such people are predictable in certain crucial ways by mathematical formulae. Business can only be efficient if human beings are redesigned to meet simplified specifications. As the century wore on, school spaces themselves were opened bit by bit to commercialization. So basically our children are becoming consumers and workers. That's what the plan is. That's what she meant by that.
Thank you for the question. I want to move along. We've got two more to get in before noon here, so let's quickly get those in, please.
This is a question about funding, where we're spending our money. Basically in Florida, I guess they have about 75 school superintendents. It's a pretty big state. We've got around 530, and back of the envelope calculation, if we moved same proportion, we'd have several hundred surplus superintendents. It seems to me that'd be tens of millions of dollars that could be shifted from administration into the classroom rather than increasing the top line. Is that feasible? Or?
I can speak to that because I represent 100 of the K-8 schools across the state, and I believe there's 521, 522, and basically, if you change the names of our 100 school district superintendents to principals, then they would become instructional. For myself, I'm a superintendent principal, so most of the day I'm instructional. And so basically what we're looking at is you don't look at the number of school districts, you look at the number of school sites. And if you go into Florida, yes, they have the 70-something superintendents, but they have hundreds of assistant superintendents and directors and people at those positions. So yes, they only have a few schools, but they're still spending the same amount of money. If, for instance, you lowered the number of school districts and these superintendents became principals, most of our principals in our rural schools would automatically get a pay raise because they would go to the existing high school where the high school principal makes more money than the superintendent. So there's kind of a misnomer about let's get rid of the school districts and we'll save money. And then I guess the other topic is some of us are so rural that you have the issues of transportation and having 4, 5, 6-year-olds on a bus. Because the kids I have, they ride a bus for an hour every day, to school, an hour home. And then if we go to the local school district, if we go into another one, they would be traveling another 30 to 45 minutes to that school. So you have those issues too. And then it takes away from local control of the community they're there, the city or the community. So you really have to look at those issues before you can just really make a blanket statement, we'll save $50 million, because that was the figure that was thrown out. And actually, you're looking at $9 million, and then that would increase if you changed us to principals, because the majority of us are superintendent principals.
All right, one more and we'll break for lunch.
Thank you. Short question. Where do private schools and religious schools fit into all of this?
I think Dr. Heron said it a while ago. We're here for all children. All children. And it doesn't matter if they're homeschooled, if they're private schools, charter schools, all that. We're here to make a difference with all children. We can't leave anybody out. And so even though I'm a superintendent at a public school,
I'm talking about the legal connection to Common Core. So let's say a religious
well,
school.
I think the legal common with the legal connection with homeschooling is that they don't have a connection except for the person that spoke a while ago that said if they don't follow that Common Core, it's going to be tough for the ACT to be passed. There's not a legal connection, but there's a connection if they don't follow it.
The plan is to impose this on everybody. If you've got your kids in private schools, which I've had in the past, and you think they're safe, you're fooling yourself. If you're homeschooling your kids and you think you're safe, you're fooling yourself. The plan is to get everybody in the program.
Right, and I think that up here we agree that is not our plan. We oppose controlling the freedom of individuals. And if we don't have freedom in our local public school, it will impose on homeschool and private school as well.
The reality that I think I would want for everyone here to know is this legislation was passed 3 years ago. So all schools in Oklahoma, or most schools in Oklahoma, to be good stewards, jumped in, and they have spent already millions of dollars implementing what someone believes to be Common Core. So due to the legislation, we're pretty far along, and so that's something, in answer to that gentleman's question, we've got to deal with.
And what Jack said is exactly right. Everybody has implemented this differently. So it is not common. There's nothing common about Common Core, because I have no idea what you guys did at your school. You have no idea what I did at my school. We have no idea what assessment it's going to be. And even in the assessment process, there were 2 different assessment companies. So if we were with Park, 3 states over, they were with a different assessment company. So nothing was common about this. And in reality, our kids in Oklahoma jump around inside our state a whole lot more than the kids outside our state jump in. So we have to think about what John said, doing the right thing for Oklahoma kids, not worrying about all the other factors, all the other states. And so I would just want to say thank you guys for letting us attend, and I really appreciate this panel. I think every single one of us has the exact same vision for better things for kids for Oklahoma, and I want you all to know that there is a choice in 2014, and no matter where your vote goes, if it's one of us, you'll get a good candidate, I promise you.
I just wanted to say on the, wherever he went, the private school guy, private schools are going to have to implement this curriculum because parents are paying for that education and they're not paying for their child to not be able to get in college. So they're going to be taught the curriculum. They're going to be forced to because the ACT and the SAT are going to be adjusted to the Common Core state standard. And so homeschoolers, there are some curriculum companies that have said that they will not adhere to the standards, and so those are the companies that I'm going to use and purchase and put pressure on to stay that way, but you are going to be forced to do that to be able to get into college. And then secondly, since I can't go down there and all these people are running for superintendent except me, I'd like to ask these people, are they going to support getting my tax money back so that I can continue to do what I do and not have to pay for someone else's child, because I don't believe in forced theft from my government.
Can you get it back without strings?
I do not want
you have a way
vouchers.
to do
Vouchers
that?
have strings attached, so I don't want to hear anyone talk about vouchers, but I do want to know if I can have my tax credit back.
Tax credit. I've supported tax credit since '94. I did not support vouchers, and I do not support what's happening with a lot of charter school right now nationally. Our new Secretary of Education appointed by the governor has not been yet confirmed by the Senate, but he is the CEO of a major charter school system himself. The model in Arizona that Janet Barisi pointed out, Carpe Diem, in Arizona, she said in the Norman transcript, 350 students, 6 teachers. We need to look at that model, she said. We're talking about a lot of different things coming under the label of parental choice and competition, Karen. We've got a lot of deception there about competition, free market. We've got a lot of homework to do. So there are charters and then there are charters. But I believe that our goal overall, yes, I would love to shut down the Federal Department of Education. That's always a goal. But we can't get there and throw away our system where it does work because we pull the funding that's been a dependency, and we've got to transition to that. But our first task is to stop this takeover from the top down, the nationalization and central control of education. If we close up too many of our rural schools, it will be centralized control there. It's a lot easier to shut up and control one superintendent than 10.
Okay, can we do it real quick so we can let everybody get out and eat?
Karen, that's a loaded question.
Not really.
Yeah. But I think the struggle that we would have is that everyone pays at a different rate. And in school funding, we get...
Let's be clear that the money is stolen.
We get our ad valorem, and probably at my school, 10% of our money, it might be more like 5% of our money comes from ad valorem, and then it goes directly through the state and goes through their coffers and comes back to us. And as a school superintendent, we fight for every penny that we can get to educate the kids that come to our door. And so, would we be open to looking at that and supporting homeschool? We do, because I have at least 60 homeschoolers in my district, so I'm really familiar with the great job that they do. So I did not answer your question, but I am in support of what you do with your kids. Okay?
John is a professor, and let me close out here with a little humor. I'm going to have to answer you this way, Karen. I've taught courses in college in school law, and the answer to the questions on most questions is yes, no, and maybe. Thank you.
Donna, did you want to address it?
I don't have a problem with looking into supporting tax credits for children that are schooled at home. I don't have a problem looking into that. I understand where you're coming from. You want to have your children at home. You have that right. And you don't necessarily want your tax dollars going there. But then I think we also have to think about, there's a lot of things to think about, but I do not.
Theft.
Yeah, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the discussion of tax credits at all.
Great. Hey, I think we're going to have an exciting election year next year. I encourage you to take the opportunity during this break to get to speak to some of these, to this panel. The lunch is being served in the fellowship hall, and there will be people to direct you. If there's anyone, if you have not purchased a ticket and you want to, you can buy one at the door. And if you want to leave campus, you're more than welcome to do that as well. We will resume at 1 o'clock promptly. Thank you.